0 to 3 lakh rupees, nil. 3 to 7 lakh rupees, 5%. 7 to 10 lakh rupees, 10%. 10 to 12 lakh rupees, 15%. 12 to 15 lakh rupees, 20%. And above 15 lakh rupees, 30%. A salaried employee in the new tax regime stands to save up to 17,500 rupees in income tax.
Mr. Soni, your thoughts? Because, of course, when we look at the personal income tax, the income tax section, there is a relief which the finance minister has provided to 4 crore pensioners and salaried. And, of course, there is a revision of the tax structure as well. So your initial comments, and then we will, of course, get into specifics.
Yeah, so my initial comment is, the biggest announcement, I would consider for this budget is that the need to reconsider the age-old Income Tax Act, which has been there for last 70 years. So I think this is the most critical part, I would say, in this budget, that government has acknowledged कि वो 60-70 साल पुराना जो एक्ट है उसको बदलने की जरूरत है. So that is the first comment on my budget, that this is something which I would say that much needed step that our finance minister has considered. So this is one. Other than that, there has been changes in limit of standard deduction, which has been increased to 75,000 from 50,000, and there has been some changes in the slabs as well, as we were discussing in the morning as well, that the government's only intention is now to continue with the new regime. Old regime के अंदर उनका कोई focus नहीं है, and we are also not expecting that anything will come, any announcement will come in the old regime. So उसके ऊपर there has not been any comment. New regime के ऊपर ही focus है, and on that as well, my first take is थोड़ा ऊंट के मुंह में गिरा.
Mr. Soni, are you seeing increased adoption of new regime on your platform? Because a lot of people use your platform to file taxes.
Yeah, the adoption of new regime definitely has been increased. But the other rationale is that if you look at the macro data, out of 8 crore tax filers, majority of the people are those people who are not paying taxes. Hardly 2.5 crore people in our country are paying taxes. So obviously the non-paying category will go for a newer regime only. So that is the one of the key reason that there is more number sitting on the new tax regime part. So we were expecting that there will be some significant relief to be provided to the middle class taxpayers, because the thing is that if you look at a average guy who is earning say between 12 to 16 lakh, for last 3-4 years there has not been any significant change in his tax liability, whether it's in a newer regime or an older regime. So वहाँ पे थोड़ा सा expectation था that government will do something that will make an impact, to his financial cash inflow, outflow. There has not been any significant change into, that thing. So that we were expecting.
Simplification and rationalization of capital gains. Capital gains taxation is also proposed to be hugely simplified. Short-term gains on certain financial assets shall henceforth attract a tax rate of 20%, while that on all other financial assets and all non-financial assets shall continue to attract the applicable tax rate. Long-term gains on all financial and non-financial assets, on the other hand, will attract a tax rate of 12.5%. For the benefit of the lower and the middle income classes, I propose to increase the limit of exemption of capital gains on certain financial assets to 1.25 lakh rupees per year. Listed financial assets held for more than a year will be classified as long-term, while unlisted financial assets and all non-financial assets will have to be held for at least 2 years to be classified as long-term. Unlisted bonds and debentures, debt mutual funds, and market-linked debentures, irrespective of holding period, however, will attract tax on capital gains at applicable rates.
Capital gains taxation, you did talk about it briefly in your first response, but the long-term gains on financial and non-financial assets will attract a tax rate of 12.5%. Short-term gains on certain financial assets will attract a tax rate of 20%. And the exemption limit for capital gains on certain financial assets has been increased to 1.25 lakhs per year, which is not much of a difference. So what kind of impact is the government expecting from these tiny changes, or help us understand the scope of the impact, after this change?
See, until before this change, short-term capital gains on financial assets would still be taxable at the tax slab applicable to the individual. Let's say I'm in the 30% tax, 10, 20, 30. It will be included along with that income, and the tax slab will apply. But now the government has introduced a scheme wherein it is going to be taxed at 20%, which is a flat rate of tax. So on short-term capital gain from certain financial assets, there is going to be a savings insofar as people who are investing is concerned, right? This is going to be the first impact. When you look into long-term capital gains, right? Typically they were subject to a special rate of tax of 10%, but now the government is increasing that from 10 to 12.5 as a part of this budget. They are also extending the limit for deduction from 1 lakh to lakh and 25,000. Mind you, these things might sound small, but the significant impact is there are changes to security transaction tax where it is going to increasing slightly. So net to net, what is going to happen is that there may not be a significant, what do you call, savings which will happen to people who are investing here. On the other hand, when the market is going to be constant, perhaps they will be able to make money in the long run on appreciation in value rather than making any leverage on account of tax rates. Because on the tax rates, what you save by on account of rate reduction, depending on the volume, you might end up paying the security transaction tax where there is a marginal increase. So neck to neck, there is going to be a slight outflow, but in the long run, if you keep invested, then the inflow could be high, is what the government's intention seems to be.